Discover the incredible journey of an amazed grandma, 5 unexpected lessons of overcoming trauma. Doris stood in her attic, surrounded by shadows and dust motes dancing erratically in the rays of an afternoon sun. One faded box caught her eye, an unassuming vessel full of memories hidden away for far too long. She couldn't help but feel a jolt of anticipation. What lay inside? Was it just an old collection of trinkets or something more significant? As her hands trembled while opening the box, a part of her felt like it was awakening from a long slumber. Months had passed since she had last felt alive. Her days had transformed into a monotonous routine of making coffee and greeting neighbors with polite small talk. She had dedicated her life to nurturing those around her, her husband, her students, even her son who was now lost to economic struggles. But what about her? The thought weighed heavily on her as she sifted through the letters, each one a beautifully penned glimpse into her husband's soul. With a longing sigh, Doris unfolded a letter from decades ago. In it, he described their early days together, full of laughter and dreams, a stark contrast to the grief of his passing that still loomed in her heart. Why did he always have to be the strong one? She felt a pang of bitterness mixed with affection. How had she let herself fade into the background? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As she immersed herself in the letters, hidden truths poured out like floodwaters. Family secrets long buried surfaced: her husband's struggles with employment, fears he had shielded her from, and a resilience that despite everything, thrived. Each revelation fanned the flames of something deep within her, igniting a determination to break free from the shadows that had encased her in solitude. She found herself wanting more, not just memories, but to reconnect, to share her own story as well as gather those around her who had faced their own battles. But even as hope blossomed in her chest, it was quickly tempered by dread. The feelings towards her estranged son coupled with guilt as she remembered his last phone call, filled with desperation. Should she reach out and risk being pulled back into chaos? The image of her newfound independence flashed before her, resilience emerging from despair, a self rediscovered through stories shared with friends over coffee, laughter echoing through her heart. Yet that loyalty smelled of sacrifice. Each choice felt heavy, stifling in its weight. Doris clenched her fists, wrestling with the pressing questions that invaded her thoughts. Could she stand strong for herself? Could she navigate her mother's heart without losing who she had just become? The mental tug-of-war left her breathless, each ring of the phone threatening to break her new beginnings. As it began to ring again, the all-too-familiar, weary conflict tightened its grip. Faced with the decision of answering or not, Doris hesitated, heart racing with the unyielding weight of the past hovering just out of reach, an unanswered question gripping her, the path forward blurred, truth and love testing the very limits of her soul. Doris took a deep breath, the decision weighing heavily on her mind. The ringing continued, insistent, a reminder of the life she had left almost entirely behind. It was as if the phone itself held the power to plunge her back into the chaos she desperately sought to escape. She hesitated, heart pounding with the juxtaposition of fear and longing. What if her son needed her? What if he was still trapped in a cycle she could hardly comprehend? Each thought spiraled into another, the once comforting attic now filled with the echoes of her indecision. Throwing caution to the wind, she picked up the phone. Hello. Her voice wavered, revealing her vulnerability. Mom, it's me. His voice crackled through the line, stony yet laced with an uncertainty that tugged at her heartstrings. Feeling the ghost of resentment rise, she gripped the receiver tighter. Why did you call? Because I can't do this alone anymore. His words were a knife, both an admission of weakness and a call for help. The very essence of motherhood pulled at Doris, the instinct to protect, to nurture. Yet her own journey of rediscovery loomed large, offering a fleeting glimpse of autonomy that both terrified and thrilled her. "Joe," as she stopped, her voice trailing into silence. Could she truly step back into the role she had long since set aside, just as she'd begun to understand who she really was? Each emotion clashed within her, creating an orchestra of rebellion and maternal duty. "Can we talk?" The silence between them became a chasm, and his plea echoed painfully in her heart. She realized she was at a crossroads, the path of safety and newfound independence, or the familiar terrain of obligation and longing for connection. While her mind spun through the what-ifs, her heart quietly identified her true desires. She craved closeness. Perhaps facing her fears could lead to healing, not just for her, but for Joe as well. Yet the specter of his past mistakes gnawed at her aspirations. Returning to that role threatened to extinguish the flickering flame of independence she had finally ignited. "I need time, Joe," she said finally, the firmness in her voice somehow surprising her. "I need to find some clarity of my own." "I understand," he replied, relief mingled with sorrow. "Just know that I'm here. Whenever you're ready." The call ended, and a silence enveloped the attic, thick with unspoken sutures of their relationship. Doris put the phone down, her forest green eyes glistening. She was grateful. She felt a power coursing through her, as if she had chosen her own path for the first time in years. But this newfound empowerment came with its own set of questions. What steps would she take next? What did clarity even look like for her? With renewed resolve, Doris shifted her focus back to the box, uncovering the letters further. This time, they echoed her own uncharted journey, granting her insights into resilience and vulnerability, qualities that had emanated from her husband but were now rising within her. She unthreaded not just his narrative but her own, as if the inked words across the paper beckoned her to breathe life into her dormant goals. As Doris carefully selected a few letters to keep close, she made a silent vow to reignite that connection with herself. Each letter represented a piece of not just her husband, but also of the woman she could becoming. The guiding questions of self-discovery began to swirl in her mind. Who did she want to be now? Full of dreams once more, she envisioned a future paved with heartfelt conversations, which could happen not just with Joe but with anyone in her life who mattered. She stood up, clutching a letter to her chest, feeling the warmth of determination settle in her. With every intention, she would decide the next steps toward reconnection and her standing in it. But as the weight of this resolve washed over her, she was struck by another thought. What if reaching for her dreams meant confronting the remnants of her past? The uncertainty loomed large, but the inklings of hope lingered, daring her to take the next leap. With a tender smile, she faced the door, allowing herself to wonder what awaited her on the other side and what challenge lay in store as she tested her boundaries once more. Yet even as she took a step forward, a faint noise caught her attention, a single letter fluttering from the box's edge. A forgotten note. It landed at her feet, daring her to pick it up. What new revelation awaited within? Doris knelt down, the letter resting innocently at her feet, demanding her attention with a whisper of promise. Her heart raced, a mixture of trepidation and curiosity flooding her senses as she carefully reached for it. The delicate paper felt almost electric against her fingertips, a tangible link to feelings and memories long buried. With a deliberate breath, she opened the note, revealing familiar handwriting that sent waves of nostalgia surging through her. The words unfolded like a story she thought she had forgotten. My dearest Doris, if you ever find yourself losing sight of who you are, remember that you possess a strength within you that is boundless. You are not just my wife, you are a force of nature, and your spirit will always rise, no matter how heavy the burdens you carry. The message resonated deep within her, igniting emotions she had buried for far too long. Her husband's voice echoed in her memory, not as a distant reminder of pain but as a clarion call to embrace the potential within her. This was beyond a letter, it was a lifeline, urging her to break the cycles of self-doubt and anxiety that seemed to linger in her life's shadows. Doris clutched the letter to her chest, wondering how she could transform that strength into actionable steps in her life. She had known his unwavering support, but it was only now that she recognized how much of it she had not internalized. His words were not just a distant echo, they were a prompt to confront her fears and redefine her identity beyond her roles as a mother and a wife. In that moment of reflection, clarity emerged. She could not shy away from Joe forever. Yes, their past was fraught with complications, but perhaps it could be transformed into a foundation for reconciliation. What if she could use the strength her husband had seen in her to guide not only herself but also her son? The thought shifted from a daunting task into an opportunity for growth. Suddenly resolute, Doris debated her first step. Should she reach out to Joe now, or tackle smaller personal projects first to build her confidence? Each option felt viable but meant potentially exposing herself to vulnerability, and she hesitated briefly. The thrill of possibility was accompanied by the unease of the known. Each route required a confrontation of her fears. Deciding that action was crucial, she resolved to find balance between the past and her aspirations for the future. She would write Joe another letter, one that acknowledged their shared history while expressing her desire to forge a new path rooted in mutual support. Fueled by this determination, she began drafting the letter. Each word was a cautious step toward reclaiming her voice, a blend of vulnerability and strength on the page. It was a dance between where she had been and where she hoped to go, a commitment to bridging the emotional gap that had rivaled decades of silence. As the sun dipped lower, casting warm hues across the attic's dusty floor, Doris realized that she wasn't merely writing to her son, she was also reintroducing herself to that little spark of joy she had almost forgotten existed deep within her. Yet as she signed her name, a sudden panic surged through her. Would Joe understand? Would he reciprocate her efforts, or would he dismiss them altogether? What if this endeavor, this earnest leap toward connection, culminated in disappointment? Doris set down the pen, fresh ink against the paper revealing more than just words, they reflected her heartbeat, vulnerabilities laid bare. Fear and hope intertwined within her, creating an intoxicating tension. In the looming silence of the attic, she pondered if confronting the past, armed with the clarity of her desires, would truly bring healing. Would she find the courage to embrace what lay ahead, even if it required facing unsettling truths about both herself and Joe? As she stood to place the letter in an envelope, a noise from beyond the attic door captured her attention, a sound of footsteps approaching, signaling that the moment to face her past, her son, and herself was drawing near. What awaited her as she prepared to step back into the world? Doris paused, the letter still warm in her grasp, a reminder of her resolve. The footsteps grew louder, and she felt the resolve waver. It was as if the air around her thickened, swelling with the promise of change and the dread of stepping into the unknown. She took a steadying breath, mentally preparing to meet whoever was on the other side of the door. When she pushed the door open, she was greeted by Charlie, her son, standing with a look of uncertainty mirrored in his eyes. It broke her heart to see that same hesitance she had felt for so long reflected back at her. "Hey, Mom," he said quietly, his voice almost a whisper. "Hey, sweetheart," she replied, her own voice trembling slightly. She gestured for him to join her in the attic, the dusty space now feeling like a sanctuary where both of them could confront their truths without judgment. As they settled on the old couch, a cloud of nostalgia enveloped them, but Doris quickly focused on the present. "I found something today," she began, her fingers instinctively squeezing the letter in her lap. "A letter from your dad." At the mention of Joe, she watched as the change washed over Charlie. His shoulders slumped, and she could sense his defensive walls rising. "You shouldn't have read it, Mom," he said, avoiding eye contact. "What is the point?" He is not around anymore. Anguish and determination warred within her. But that is the thing, Charlie. He is still part of our lives. I need you to understand that. We can't just ignore everything because it's painful. His eyes finally met hers, frustration simmering just below the surface. You're always defending him. What about how he left? How it hurt us? There was a deep anger in his tone, a weight of years spent feeling abandoned. It hit her directly in the gut, her defensive posture faltering. I know how you feel. I experienced that pain too. Doris's voice softened as she sought to bridge the chasm between them. But I want to find a way to move forward. I don't want to live in bitterness. I want you to see that it's okay to acknowledge the hurt but not let it define us. Charlie didn't respond right away. Instead, he stared at the attic floor, and the air thickened with unsaid words. In that moment, Doris realized she needed to create a new conversation, a dialogue that was not just about Joe's absence, but about their shared perceptions and how they could heal together. I want us to explore this, Charlie, she continued, her resolve growing clearer. Not just about your father, but about us. I want us to be stronger together. Slowly, he seemed to wrestle with her words, looking up at her uncertainly. And how do we do that? In that instant, Doris felt the flicker of confidence that her husband had talked about in the letter. She saw an opportunity, an invitation to step into her role not merely as a mother, but as a guide for both her and her son's journey. Let us start by being honest. I'll share my feelings on what happened with your dad, and you share yours. We can finally sit down, no pretenses. I think we owe it to ourselves. Charlie hesitated but then nodded. There was a shift in the air around them, a willingness to confront rather than avoid. As they began to exchange stories filled with pain and fear, something profound began to unfold between mother and son. The burdens they had carried for years started to loosen, replaced slowly by understanding and compassion. Yet, just as the dialogue began to flow, a text notification from her phone interrupted. It was from Joe. The words flashed like a jolt, awakening feelings she thought had been secured in the vault of her heart. Doris looked back at Charlie, the moment frozen in time. Should she respond? Would she reveal this new development now, or would it unravel the progress they had just begun to build? The room felt charged with tension, both of them poised on the edge of revelations that could either break them down or allow them to rise anew. Which path would she choose? As the vibrations from her phone faded into a silence that felt almost deafening, Doris's heart raced. She could sense Charlie's eyes darting to the screen as if he could read the message through the glare. The air in the attic turned thick again, punctuated by the reprieve of their earlier clarity giving way to uncertainty and doubt. Was this the moment to revisit the deep-seated wounds that Joe had left them with, or had she finally begun to help Charlie heal from them? Swallowing hard, Doris felt the weight of the letter in her lap as yet another sudden realization washed over her. This was about more than Joe. It was about forging their own identities, free from the shadows of the past. Mom. Charlie's tentative voice broke through her thoughts, its lilt steeped in a blend of curiosity and caution. Who is there? His question hung between them like a frayed thread, waiting to unravel. Doris took a steadying breath, her fingers brushing against the screen of her phone. The message pulsed beneath her fingertips, urging her to confront the emotions that rattled inside her. But could that wait? She needed to be present for Charlie now. It's from your dad, she confessed, the words barely escaping her lips. She met Charlie's gaze, searching for that flicker of understanding that had sparked their earlier connection. The moment expanded as he processed her words, a flood of emotions crossing his face. Had flickered, but so did a glimmer of something else, hope. Anger? Doris couldn't be sure, and that ambiguity unsettled her. Mom, why would you even think about responding? He blurted out, the walls of his defense once again starting to rise. He left, and you're still letting him impact us. Doris flinched internally, but instead of retreating, she steadied herself. Here was the crossroad, either she could hide behind her fear, or she could confront it head-on. Charlie, I know it feels that way. I do. But responding doesn't mean I'm choosing him, it's about me taking control of my feelings. I don't want to allow him to dictate our lives any longer. This is about reclaiming my narrative, our narrative. Would you be willing to do that with me, even if it's difficult? His brow furrowed, wrestling with her proposal. The hesitance was alive in him, but there was also a flicker of curiosity. What if it hurts? He asked, quieter now, his resistance softening. Doris took a risk, leaning forward slightly, as if to bridge the distance between their hearts. Then we faced that hurt together. Just like we're doing now. I want to be here for you, in every way we need, not just about Joe. It's about you and me, too. Let us take back our choices, Charlie. For a moment, silence enveloped them, the attic's dust motes dancing in the muted light like the unsettled thoughts hanging in the air. The room felt charged with potential, leaving everything unspoken poised on the brink of revelation. I don't know, Mom, Charlie muttered, just above a whisper, slowly looking down as the weight of years settled back onto his shoulders. Yet, Doris could see the tiniest crack in his barrier, a space where growth could slip through. Then, as if shaking off the weight, he said, fine. But if we're doing this, I want us to do it right. Every question, every answer, no holding back. Doris's heart lifted, a sense of buoyancy anchoring her in place. Yes, together. We'll be honest, fiercely honest. But as she reached for her phone, her heartbeat quickened, and for an instant, she hesitated. She was torn between the past, with its ghosts, and the future, with its promise. The moment played out before her, a culminating point of choice, a symphony of potential conflicts wrapped up in a single decision. As she opened the message from Joe, an unexpected resolve blossomed within her. This was a challenge she'd tackle, not just for herself, but for Charlie, too. Shaking off the remnants of uncertainty, she reminded herself that she was no longer the passive bearer of pain. However, the stakes were still dire. What would Joe's words reveal? What consequences could they unleash? The unknown loomed like a dark cloud, a reminder that while they sought to understand the past, it was the future that remained uncertain and ripe for conflict. But for Charlie and her, what they would uncover mattered. She took a deep breath, her determination solidifying again, but now with an electrifying edge. This was merely the beginning of a complexity they would wrestle with together. Would her next steps dissolve the fragile bridge they had built, or would they become the foundation for something profoundly transformative? As Doris opened the message from Joe, her finger trembling slightly on the screen, she felt the enormity of what was about to unfold. The room, once thick with uncertainty, now buzzed with anticipation and a trace of fear. She read quickly. His words were terse, almost as if he were anxious about what might follow. Hey Doris, it's been a while. I've been thinking about reaching out for a long time. Hope you're both doing okay. I know I messed up. Can we talk? She blinked at the screen, her heart racing with conflicting impulses. There it was, the invitation that could release or imprison her further. Let me see. Charlie's voice jolted her as she realized she had been staring blankly. She held the phone closer to her chest, instinctively protective. Why are you even considering it? Because, she said, voice steadying, part of healing is facing what happened, whether it's good or bad. What he did was bad, Mom. You can pretend it's not, but it was. Charlie's anger hung in the air, dense and unyielding. She knew he wasn't wrong, but his response brought into focus the very dilemma she was navigating, choosing the painful truth over revisiting her past. She couldn't buckle under his scrutiny, however justified. "Charlie," she began, pausing to search for the right words, "the anger you feel is valid, and I share it. But if I ignore this, I'm just pushing us both deeper into silence." He crossed his arms, defiance radiating from him. "This is just a bad idea. What will it solve?" Doris could feel the walls tightening around them again, like a suffocating embrace. "It could help us make sense of everything. Maybe it's not about him at all, maybe it's about breaking the cycle of fear, understanding what we went through so we can figure out what we want next." "That just sounds like giving him power again," he shot back. She felt a crack in the wall she'd been so carefully constructing around her emotions. Behind that wall, there was so much turmoil. "Maybe I'm tired of letting fear decide every move we make." There was a flicker of silence as Charlie processed her words. Her strength felt galvanizing, but it carried weight. Each statement was a step deeper into uncharted waters. What was she willing to lose to gain what she sought? "If we're doing this, we have to be ready for the truth," he finally said, moving to sit beside her. "What if it's worse than I think?" Doris searched his face and saw the mix of vulnerability and resilience. Her resolve strengthened in that moment. The idea of walking this path together felt like their best chance at growth. But the hidden cost of their choices loomed. "Then we face it together," she reiterated, the truth anchoring her words. "It could be hard." "I know." His voice softened, "but we can't keep pretending like everything's fine." "Yes, we need to honor the reality of our experiences." Doris was beginning to understand that in sharing this burden, they were both forming a new bond, one fortified by honesty. She took a deep breath, the tension mingling with an unexpected sense of empowerment. This was theirs to navigate, a dual journey that came with the promise to explore the hard truths of their past. With Charlie by her side, she felt ready to type a response. But as her fingers hovered over the screen, dread rushed in again, wrapping around her like a heavy cloak. What would she say? How much truth was too much? She put down the phone. "We'll draft it together, but I need your input. If we're jumping into this, let's be thorough." His expression eased, there was a flicker of collaboration. "Okay, but I don't want to sugarcoat anything." "Agreed. But remember, we need to be careful. This isn't just a confrontation, it's about reclaiming what was lost." Charlie nodded, eyes clearer now. "So how do we start?" The question hung between them, a bridge toward unknown territory. As they began discussing verbal strategies, each word felt like the unearthing of potential, an environment of honesty, where both their voices mattered. Yet, the sense of looming uncertainty tightened again. Could they truly unravel the complexities of their shared past? Doris felt the stirring within her. The desire for liberation mingled with fear, led her to sense that in order to reclaim her narrative, she must grasp this moment with both hands. What would she discover about herself that was hidden away for too long? But soon, her thoughts turned to Joe, the past looming like a storm cloud gathering overhead. While her heart raced with anticipation, the looming confrontation was also a precipice. "Whatever happens next, it'll change everything," she stated strongly, her resolve solidifying. "Then let us make it count." Charlie's determination matched her own. As they finalized their response, the shadows of the attic felt less stifling and more inviting. They prepared for a confrontation with the past, but an uncharted future awaited, thrilling yet terrifying. They were ready to confront the truths of their past together. But what awaited them might just challenge their resolve in ways they could never have anticipated. Doris sat at the edge of the old wooden table in the attic, the lone window casting fragile beams of light across the dust particles swirling in the air, a momentary refraction of hope amidst the uncertainty that loomed. In front of her lay the phone, the message from Joe a tangible reminder of a past she had tried desperately to compartmentalize. As she and Charlie prepared to craft their response, each word felt like a stepping stone laid upon a shifting foundation. "What do you think he wants to talk about?" Charlie asked, his fingers tapping nervously against the table. Doris contemplated the question, frustration and fear battling within her. Maybe he wants closure, or perhaps he needs forgiveness. Either way, none of it is simple. As they worked together, selecting the right words became a mini laboratory of emotion. Doris experienced a surprising clarity. The act of writing forced her to articulate feelings she had buried under years of resentment. Despite the palpable tension, a flicker of awakening lit inside her. After several drafts, Doris resisted the urge to overanalyze. "What matters is that we're honest," she finally said, her voice steadying as each word emerged. "We can't hide behind niceties." Charlie looked up, his expression growing more contemplative. "Yeah, I think we need to hold him accountable, but we should also put our feelings out there." Doris nodded, struck by a realization that their collaboration was something transformative. Their relationship was fracturing under years of silence, but this shared experience was an opportunity to mend the cracks and redefine their dynamic. As they pushed forward, the emotional stakes rapidly escalated, sweat formed on Doris's brow as impending dread seeped in. What was she truly ready to confront? She opened herself to vulnerabilities she hadn't faced in over a decade. "Charlie, what are you scared of most about this?" He paused, the question catching him off guard. "I guess that he'll minimize everything." The raw honesty in his voice tugged at her heart. She shared the same fear, a notion that facing Joe might inadvertently diminish the weight of their struggle. Maybe that is why we need to be vocal, to remind ourselves of how far we've come. They shared a silent agreement, a commitment to themselves that this was about reclaiming their narrative, not just with Joe, but in every aspect of their lives. Once the message was drafted, a moment of stillness enveloped them. The air shifted, electrifying with the enormity of what they had created together. They had ventured beyond mere words, they had begun to redefine the boundaries of their relationship, shifting from fear to empowerment. "It's time," Charlie said, his tone unexpectedly mature. They both stared at the screen, the final words staring back at them like a challenge. With a deep breath, Doris pressed send, and in that instant felt an unexpected release, as if a weight had been lifted. But with that release came a new wave of uncertainty. What did sending that message mean for the journey ahead? Had they truly prepared for the inevitable response? The thrill of taking back control was instantly tempered by icy realization they had crossed a threshold into territory that could reshape both their futures. "We did it," Doris said quietly, more to herself than to Charlie. "Now we wait," he replied, but the heaviness settled in like an unseen hand gripping her heart. In that moment, the grind of reality began to churn inside her. The anticipation of hardship clashed with her blossoming sense of empowerment. As they sat in silence, waiting, Doris's mind began to oscillate between dread and excitement. Was this the first step toward healing, or would it plunge them deeper into the shadows of their past? Regardless of the answer, Doris felt a burgeoning resilience within her. The path ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear: she was unearthing layers of herself she had long neglected, and with each uncovering came a curiosity she hadn't experienced in years. "Whatever happens next, we face it as a team," she reminded herself, forging an unspoken pact with Charlie. Yet, in shadows deeper than the attic, something stirred. What revelations awaited them, hidden just beyond the horizon? And could the truth they sought actually lead to the freedom they desperately craved? Doris leaned back in her chair, twisting a lock of hair around her finger, her mind in chaos. The silence bore down like a suffocating weight, laced with both hope and trepidation. Each second stretched into an eternity as her thoughts raced, analyzing the implications of their message and what a response might mean. Would Joe's reply drag more wounds to the surface or serve as a stepping stone toward healing? What if it wasn't about closure at all? Doris? Charlie's voice broke through her haze. What if he comes back and tries to manipulate us again? To pull us into a conversation that gets us nowhere? She pondered this. For so long, Joe had occupied a space in her mind, warping her sense of self with guilt and confusion. Then we don't let him, she said, surprising herself with her steadfastness. We engage on our terms. We are not kids anymore. Doris's response sparked something within her, a flicker of confidence igniting in her chest as she resolved to embrace agency for the first time in years. The conversation with Charlie had already altered something fundamental. She had shaken loose the shrouding vines of the past. Suddenly, she had an impulse to begin writing again, not just responses to Joe, but something deeper, a chronicle of her journey. This idea thrilled her as much as it frightened her. It meant not only exploring painful memories, but also wielding the power to redefine them. What if she could recount her pain as part of a narrative that belonged to her, not Joe? Hey, Charlie, she said, her voice sharper with newfound resolve, I think I want to start journaling again. There's so much I want to remember, not just about Joe, but about us, about everything. A small smile broke on Charlie's face. That's great. Writing has always been therapeutic for you. Remember those poems you used to share? Your voice deserves to be heard. His encouragement fueled her burgeoning confidence, and she could feel barriers crumbling. With each layer of doubt stripped away, a sense of creativity bubbled to the surface. The attic suddenly transformed, morphing into a sacred space ready to birth her thoughts onto paper. Maybe I'll start with what I remember most, how I've changed since moving back here. She grabbed a notepad and pen, setting them on the table before her. She caught Charlie's curious glance, feeling the invisible thread of support tying them together even tighter. As she began writing, she unearthed memories layered under dust, the constant validation she had sought, the coping mechanisms she had employed. Each word stung, yet brought catharsis. Joe had taught her betrayal, but there was a lesson in resilience as well. For every moment he had diminished her, she had resisted falling into despair. After a while, she paused, wiping away tears that had formed during an unexpected avalanche of recollections. Charlie leaned closer, concern pulling in his eyes. You okay? Yeah, she breathed, the release of pent-up emotions flooding through her. I think I just finally realized how much strength I really have. I've survived so much. Success invigorated her. But lurking behind her joy was the looming shadow of Joe's imminent reply, a reminder of the unresolved chaos swirling just beyond their newly forged boundaries. Each moment they spent waiting felt vital as she recognized that whatever came next would test her mettle further. The silence was broken by the faint chiming of her phone, its screen lighting up with a new message. Doris's heart raced. It was from Joe. Doris, Charlie whispered, his entire demeanor tense with anticipation. For a fleeting second, everything seemed suspended. The act of sending the message was a memory fading into the background as something even more daunting and transformative approached. What would his words reveal about their struggles? Would they unearth a truth that could either propel her forward or drag her back? With measured breaths, she reached for the phone, every nerve ending tingled with dread and determination. Doris's fingers hovered over the screen, hesitation battling with an urgent desire for clarity. She opened the message, and the words unfolded like a lifeline thrown into murky waters. Yet the pulse of anxiety quickened in her chest as she read Joe's banal apology wrapped in a veil of manipulative familiarity. He wanted to reconnect, to talk things over, as if their past could be erased with idle chatter. Her initial impulse was to recoil, yet there was a flare of defiance within her. We are not kids anymore. The phrase resonated, echoing through her mind like a war cry. She had the power to dictate the direction of this encounter, to construct walls where she saw fit and open doors only when she deemed it necessary. Doris. Charlie's voice pulled her from her reverie. She was still staring at the screen, processing the implications of Joe's overture. Are you okay? Yeah, I will be, she replied, feeling newfound certainty replace doubt. I just need to think about this. Charlie nodded, giving her the space she needed. But it wasn't just about Joe. The moment bore an added weight, a deciding point in her journey of self-reclamation and growth. She closed the message, turning her attention back to the blank pages waiting before her, each one a canvas yet to be painted with her truth. Doris picked up the pen again. Writing felt powerful now, a means of sculpting her narrative, not just recounting it. She could explore every twisted path Joe had dragged her down, each wrong turn and missed opportunity. But the focus shifted from mere memory to expression, how the struggles had cemented her resilience, a foundation built on her own terms. As her pen flowed across the paper, a wave of clarity washed over her. She focused on the first lesson of her journey, recognizing manipulation. Joe had instilled fear and uncertainty in her thoughts, but now it was apparent. She had the ability to see through his illusion, a reality she had long forgotten. She embraced not just the betrayal, but her capability to rise from it. The refrain of her childhood echoed in her mind. Doris, if you can articulate your feelings, they can't control you. It was her mother's voice, one she had muted over time in favor of submission. But now, turning back to those roots, she felt empowered to challenge the past. Writing about it made it tangible, it set her emotions free. She paused, reflecting on the path ahead. Joe's message might incite fear, but she could harness that emotion, could channel it into something constructive. Perhaps it was time to respond, not out of obligation, but to assert her position, yet another step toward her own autonomy. After several moments of contemplation, she began crafting her reply, carefully choosing each word. She stated how she felt, expressed her boundaries plainly, and most importantly, asserted her current self, a woman unshackled from the chains of dependency and guilt. As she hit send, a mix of liberation and tension surged through her. The unknown now loomed larger than before. What would Joe's response be? Would he be receptive to her newfound strength or resort back to old patterns of manipulation? Charlie watched her with expectant eyes, the kind of support that validated her daily triumphs. She could see it in his expression, he understood this was a significant step. But their eyes drifted back to the phone, waiting for the response that would inevitably provoke another wave of change. Each moment that passed felt weighty, laden with the uncertainty of what lay ahead. Her thoughts spiraled around the lessons she still had to learn about trust, about boundaries, but more crucially, about the strength of her voice. Then, the phone lit up again, and her heart stuttered in her chest. Another message, but the fear had transformed. Would she confront Joe again, or would this finally be the moment of truth where she fully embraced her own narrative? There's no turning back now, she muttered, feeling an edge of determination sharp within her soul as she reached for the device once more. It was time to see who she had truly become. Doris stood at the threshold of her attic, now transformed into a crucible of emotions and discoveries. The air felt electric, charged with the anticipation of her response to Joe. She could hear her own heartbeat resonating like a drum, steady and strong, a reminder of her self-awareness and growth. The past had been a formidable adversary, but she was no longer living in its shadow. As the phone chimed with incoming notifications, she felt a powerful resolve. Gone were the days of helplessness, she had accomplished an understanding of her identity, influenced by her husband's enduring words that had seeped through the fog of sorrow, igniting her latent courage. She had chosen to confront the tumultuous past while fostering her journey towards a future unfettered by emotional constraints. Doris reflected on the message she had sent. It wasn't just an email about old grievances, it was a declaration of independence. She had moved beyond merely reacting to Joe's turmoil and instead had embraced her role as the author of her own narrative. Each word she had crafted was an assertion of her agency, a testament to her resilience. Moments later, with a subtle vibration, the phone lit up again. Her pulse quickened as she opened Joe's response. His words struck the core of her being, a mixture of guilt, desperation, and a hint of vulnerability. But those sentiments were no longer hers to claim. She read his words and felt an odd sense of detachment, as if she were observing a stranger's plight. His attempts to revisit the past failed to manipulate her heart. Now, nothing could unwound the clarity of her self-worth. Doris, Charlie's voice brought her back. She glanced up and saw her son witnessing her moment, his gaze searching for confirmation of her strength. She met his eyes and a flood of understanding washed over them, a connection that reinforced their journey together. Engaging in conversation with Joe was no longer a predestined obligation. It held a choice filled with potential learning, not just for her, but for Charlie, too. Maybe this was where they could draw the line between what influenced their lives and what empowered their future. "Mom, are you okay?" Charlie asked, sensing the waves of emotion swirling within her. "Absolutely," she replied, her voice steady and resolute. "This is all a part of healing. And I am finally allowing myself to heal." He nodded as relief brightened his expression. "What is he saying?" Doris hesitated for just a moment before revealing the essence of Joe's message, an echo of manipulation wrapped neatly in layers of remorse. "I think he still believes he has power over us," she said, the strength in her voice evident. "But I recognize it now, his tactics no longer work on me. I want to let him dictate how I feel." "I'm proud of you," Charlie said, the pride brightening his face as if reflecting the very light streaming through the attic window. In that moment of mutual recognition, they forged a compact of honesty and empowerment. They were not differ, but partners navigating their own truths. Together, they had both broken free from the narratives imposed upon them. Just then, a surge of inspiration struck Doris. She picked up her writing pad, her pen fluidly gliding across the page. She wrote not just for herself but for Charlie too, a letter that reiterated their hard-won lessons, solidifying their new familial bond. Each stroke felt cathartic as she documented the evolution of their relationship. Doris finished with a flourish, the last words encapsulating her journey. "While the past has tried to bind us, it is the strength of our unity that will define our future." When she looked up, Charlie's eyes were shimmering with potential, no longer reflecting trauma but hope. "Where do we go from here?" he asked, a tone of readiness in his voice. "We take it step by step. Always moving forward but never forgetting where we've been," she replied. With clarity sharpening her vision, Doris envisioned a future alongside Charlie that integrated both heritage and evolution, heartache and healing, one that extended beyond the confines of their pain. This was the moment they could build anew, redefine their connections, and embrace whatever lay before them with confidence born from their unique journeys. "I think I'm finally ready to reach out to him," Doris said, a newfound determination coursing through her veins. "On my own terms." "Then let us do it," he said, an unmistakable energy igniting between them. Together, they reached for the phone, both signaling the beginning of an entirely different chapter, one marked by open communication, mutual support, and healing. In the attic, the sunlight broke through the windows, illuminating Doris's face, which now radiated a solid confidence she had long thought unfathomable. She realized she was no longer merely a mother or a widow, she was an individual, someone capable of reshaping her own stories, equipped to guide herself and her son toward a brighter, empowered future. As they prepared their message, she felt the weight of her past lifting. It would not dictate who she would become. She had conquered the inner turmoil, demonstrated resilience in adversity, and engaged in forthright conversations with those she loved, united in their desire for growth and understanding. This was more than closure, it was an opportunity to define who she would be in this world. It was here, in this moment, she felt assured her path was lit, marked with the bravery of facing challenges head-on. Doris breathed deeply, her heart swelling with satisfaction. She had come home, not just to the attic, but to herself. Now, more than ever, it was time for every viewer witnessing her journey to witness their own transformational moments. If you appreciate this incredible story of resilience, you need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support for more moving tales of personal growth. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm so more inspirational stories can reach those who need them. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Every thought matters. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see how they, too, can embrace their journeys of overcoming. Let us spread empowerment and transformation.